To help us answer the question, why civility? I'm going to go through a Socratic exercise. I'm going to ask and answer questions until we get to the core problem that most of us are looking to solve when we talk about civility. So the question is, what are our business goals? What are we trying to accomplish through civility? And the answer is usually because we want to have a positive, inclusive workplace culture. Why? Why do we want a positive, inclusive workplace culture? And that's because that positive, inclusive workplace culture solve problems not only better, but more ethically. Better problem solving. Solving problems well is what all businesses are in the business of doing. If you are not solving problems well, you will not be in business long. So let's identify what the elements are of a positive and inclusive work group. To create a positive and inclusive work group, you need to accept people as they are and not how you want them to be, but how they actually are. We need to tolerate differences between people. That's what inclusion means. Focus on our common ethics. What do we have in common? How do we agree on what is good? What a good outcome is? That's not always easy to do in a diverse group. And then I think the most important part is to intentionally work past our disagreements with goodwill. That is what would create a positive, inclusive work group. That's the ideal. The reality is we humans are very tribal, and we often treat disagreements not as a valid disagreement on what a good solution is, but as power plays and as evil manipulations. If someone doesn't agree with us and is fighting us on something, on a solution, maybe they're evil or insane. And I know you've had that thought because we all have that thought. And the reason we all have those thoughts is because sometimes that's exactly what's happening. It would be nice if everyone was working with goodwill towards other, but the reality is that's not always the case. Sometimes that's not happening. Sometimes people really are involved in power plays and manipulation. The problem is when we start to think of these problems in an us versus them scenario, and you start to assume that people who disagree with you are doing so for nefarious reasons, then we ourselves move away from good problem solving, and we start to justify our own bad behavior towards this other person because that other person is evil or some variation on that. So thinking ill of your fellow employees can cause you to be the problem. And you'll justify your behavior against these other people because now you're in a fight that has to be won. This problem is so universal to all of humanity. Like, it's not unique to anybody. Every culture has some version of the golden rule because of this. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because this is where the solution to this lies. The admonition is to remember this other person you are disagreeing with is a human just like you. So perhaps maybe give them the benefit of the doubt and treat them with dignity and compassion. Treat them how you would want to be treated by them. You may just find that when you do this, that things get easier and that solutions start to present themselves. This really does work. It's why my dad taught me to slide through life, try being nice. And I have used this exact technique in a bunch of different situations, some of them very, very difficult, and always came out okay, and with my dignity intact and my reputation intact. When I talk to people who are dealing with difficult disagreements, and I do a lot of training on discrimination, harassment, retaliation. So a lot of my work is how to stop bullies, and bullies exist. When I teach people how to do this, usually what they want when someone comes to me, they want me to fix the other person. They want me to teach them how to fix this other person so that they can outmaneuver this other person, whoever this other person is. And what they don't usually understand and what I have to teach them is in order to do that, requires you to behave in a dignified and civil manner. I can't fix the other person. You can't fix the other person. And it's entirely possible the other person doesn't need to be fixed. But what you can do is change how you respond to these situations and respond in a more dignified and civil manner. And that is going to help you in so many ways. Fix yourself first. Focus on being conscientious. Focus on being ethical. Focus on the problem solving. Think about how your own behavior might be impacting others. And then that itself is going to change the dynamic. The way to create positive workplace cultures is for you to decide, for each of you as individuals to decide to behave in a dignified manner and to treat everyone you meet with dignity. And this requires you to take responsibility for your behavior. And when you change how you respond, it changes how the other person responds. And I promise you, when you do this, and you start focusing on how you can respond in a dignified way and treat the other people you are in conflict with dignity, instead of focusing on winning the conflict, you focus instead on creating good solutions for the organizations you're with, then you will in fact win. I promise you. You're going to win by not fighting. Always remember, the conflict is not on how to solve the problem. The conflict over how to solve the problem is not your real problem. The problem you're trying to solve is what the problem is. So if you focus on solving that problem instead of solving the conflict over how to solve the problem, you're going to get farther along because you're solving the right problem. The problem. Not the conflict over the problem you're trying to solve. And yes, this is true even when the other person is intentionally trying to sabotage you. This will work even if the other person actually is trying to sabotage you. I have lived this, I have done this, and it really does work. And you can come out of some pretty seriously insane situations and interpersonal conflicts with your dignity and your reputation intact, but only if you respond to these situations with dignity and conscientiousness and a laser-like focus on solving the real problem well, and not necessarily your way and not necessarily on winning. Focus on solving the problem conscientiously in a dignified manner. The other person wants to behave badly, let them. That's them. Your job is to be dignified.